For those of you who know absolutely nothing about Power Rangers Prime, I can briefly explain that this is the reboot of the comics, and if you have never read a Power Rangers comic before, then this is your chance to start from scratch. This new story has no relation with the previous comics, and everything you are going to see is completely different from what you have known all your life about Power Rangers. Here they only used important details like power, transformations, and some characters, but the personality of them may be different. This is the first episode of Power Rangers Prime and the beginning of the reboot of the comics. The story begins by showing us many colors which are sticking to a hand as if it were paint, and there is a voice that is narrating a message about humanity. This message talks about the idea that humanity has about good always defeating evil, but then the narrator proposes the idea of what would happen if evil is redefined as order and progress. Then we are shown a person wearing a Red Ranger suit, which I must say is the best Power Ranger suit I have ever seen in my life, and in this same image there are several silhouettes of different colors. Then the narrator asks us, in what kind of world would a superhero be created? In this image we can see a sign that says New Elter and gives buyers a warning. We then start to see Lauren Sheba, who is on the run as she is being attacked, but this doesn't stop her. The police are trying to arrest Lauren, but we quickly realize that these are not your typical Earth police. These officers are called Earth Security Task Force. They have very powerful weapons and have blue skin, so we can assume they are from Elter. Because Lauren had no other way to escape, she decides to use her samurai morpher to transform, and this would be the first Power Rangers Prime transformation. Unfortunately, one of the officers shot the morpher and Lauren was unable to complete the transformation, but this is not going to stop her. She starts to use her sword to defend herself, and from this moment on we can start to see some excellent action scenes. We then start to see Lauren attack the officers with kicks, but here we see one of the first changes in Power Rangers Prime. Normally we are used to Rangers never losing fights, but on this occasion Lauren is easily stopped when she gets an arrow in the shoulder. Despite this, she uses a very powerful attack to distract the officers and manages to escape. Later we see a boy named Mark who has some marks on his face and goes to throw out the garbage. While doing this he is complaining about some unimportant things, but the important thing is that he mentions Orion, the Silver Ranger we met in Super Megaforce. When he opens the dumpster he realizes that there is a woman inside who is very hurt and asking for help, and she is Lauren, but Mark doesn't know her. At that precise moment an officer appears and begins to ask Mark for explanations as to why he is there at that moment. Something important is that this officer calls Mark as a refugee and a rather long number. Mark explains that he just went out to throw out the garbage, and although the officer asked him if he had seen a blonde woman, Mark decided to lie and told him that he had not seen anyone. When the officers left, Mark quickly opened the dumpster to help Lauren, even though he didn't know what he was going to do with her. We then get to see the face of a young Eltarian that we are soon to meet. The next day, the story places us at Angel Grove University, but we can realize that this looks like a futuristic world. The professor is an Eltarian woman named Baral, and she starts talking about history, so she wants to talk about the history of Earth. Meanwhile, we can see that Mark is texting Orion to find out about Lauren's condition, and he replies that she is still snoring very loudly. Because the teacher notices that Mark is distracted, she asks him about his history since he is a refugee, and Mark says that he came to Earth when he was only 6 years old. The teacher wants to know if Mark remembers everything that happened when he arrived on Earth, but Mark tells her that he doesn't remember much, only that his home was destroyed. The teacher apologizes for bringing up such painful memories, but she gets the feeling that everyone shares much the same pain or privilege. Then the teacher asks June, the same Elter boy we saw earlier, to share his story because even though he is an Eltarian, he was born on Earth. Here begins the true story of Power Rangers Prime, and is that 70 years ago the Earth was invaded by the Beast Brigade of Gamma 7. Humans had never had contact with aliens and the entire human race were overwhelmed, so Elter did not stand idly by. Then the Eltarians became the protectors of Earth, and the humans welcomed him. Because of this, the Eltarians provided mankind with a lot of technology that would have taken centuries to develop, and this was very good for the Earth. Something interesting in this picture is that we can see a person from the planet Aquitar and an Eltarian very similar to Zardes, the officer who was a friend of Zordon and Lord Zed. The teacher tells June that this is a politically correct story, but the second part is that after that the Earth was colonized by Elter and is now colony number 205. Now the teacher asks a key question and asks June and Mark to answer it. After all that has happened, is the Earth a better place? June's answer is yes, and Mark's answer is no. Later, June is out for sports and apparently practices martial arts. June is always running late, and his friend Valentina, who looks human, teases him by telling him that his mom is going to punish him by making him run. A friend of theirs named Ryan is fighting, and apparently he is so good at fighting that he easily defeats his opponent to go talk to his friends. Apparently Ryan is Valentina's boyfriend and a very close friend of June's, who also teases June by telling him that he is going to have to run for being late. June wants to have an important conversation with his friends, and Ryan thinks June wants to join the troopers, but Valentina thinks it's that he's going to have to explain to June about human stuff again. June tells them that he was investigating them again, but before he finishes his sentence his friends interrupt him saying that he won't start with the same story again. His friends think that this is fiction, but June assures them that they are not, and at that moment the conversation is interrupted by June's mother. She is Admiral Janessa, and she quickly asks Cadet Ryan to calm down since he was a little scared when he saw her coming. The Admiral wants to talk to her son and begins to tell him that he has always loved myths and legends, but he should stop because he is no longer a child. She also tells him that these conversations are dangerous and that he should only observe the land they have created, a land protected and at peace. After that she tells June that his tardiness reflects on her, so she chastises him and asks him to go run several laps, but also tells him to remember where his loyalty lies. Now we see that somewhere else the VR troopers are fighting some mutants, and this whole battle is being shown on TV, but it's not a fictional show, it's real life. For those who don't know VR Troopers, it was a series premiered in 1994 that only had 2 seasons and was created by Sabans using the same formula of Power Rangers. He bought scenes from a Japanese series and adapted it for America, but because the Japanese scenes were finished, then VR Troopers ended in 1996. Now Hasbro are the owners of these characters, and it is for this reason that they have started using them in these comics. Orion is preparing food for Lauren, who was awakened by Doobie, Orion's dog. Lauren feels a little unsure as she doesn't know what's going on, but Orion tries to explain to her that her friend Mark brought her here to help her. Lauren doesn't know who Mark is either, so Orion explains to her that Mark's real name is Markin and he is half Aquitar. Lauren thinks that she shouldn't be there since it's dangerous, but Orion tries to calm her down by telling her that her secret is safe. Orion also explains to her that he is also a refugee since he comes from Andresia even though he looks like a human, so he understands the sentiment. He also tells her that he arrived on Earth 10 years ago and is also not a big fan of the Eltarians occupying Earth. After this, Lauren began to trust Orion, and after telling him her name, Orion asked her about the reasons why she was running away. On the street, many policemen have arrived, and apparently this is Orion and Mark's apartment. Mark quickly tries to warn Orion about the cops, but an officer starts talking to Mark as he remembers seeing him the day he was throwing out the trash. The officer begins to ask Mark about Lauren, but Mark continues to say he doesn't know anything, and at that moment June appears, who stops the officer. June asks the officer to leave Mark alone, and although Mark doesn't know why June is helping him since they are not friends, June's answer is going to surprise him. June asks Mark about the blonde Power Ranger hiding in his apartment, but Mark doesn't understand what a Power Ranger is. Lauren begins to tell her story and says that many years ago her ancestors had a special responsibility. They used things called morphers to obtain a cosmic power called the Morphin grid and become the Power Rangers. In the image presented we can see that the leader of the team is a woman with black hair, and that the beginning of this movement was in Japan, a clear reference to Sentai. Lauren says that for generations her family and other Rangers had protected the Earth as best they could. They battled monsters, mutants, and many villains who wanted to destroy the Earth. In 1954 the Beast Brigade came to Earth and the Power Rangers fought them, but because the challenge was too great, the Eltarians came and saved the Earth. Then Eltar colonized the Earth, and they didn't like the Power Rangers very much. Because of this the Eltarians hunted the Rangers to finish them off, but Lauren, being a child, managed to escape, and since then she has been on the run until now. At that moment something exploded on the moon and an object began to fall to Earth rapidly. When we look closely, the object appears to be the same space garbage container in which Zordon had locked Rita, although in this universe we don't know if this happened. Hands begin to emerge from the dumpster, and they appear to be the same hands with multicolored paint that we saw at the beginning of the story. The woman who comes out of this container looks a lot like Rita Repulsa since she also has white hair, some of her clothes have some of the witch's details, and she says the same words. After many years, I am finally free.